The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Maynard Bangs presiding. We all rise to the Honorable Judge Bangs.
Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are hearing the case of The People versus Constantine, a 2005 superhero horror movie about terminally ill exorcist/demonologist John Constantine, who must unravel a mystery involving the suicide of a police officer's sister and a demonic plot to take over the world. For those of you unfamiliar with our court proceedings, we are here to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. As always in this courtroom, films are to be considered excellent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond a shadow of a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Big Ben Haslar, you are appearing on behalf of the prosecution. You may present your opening statement.
Members of the court, my story begins last Saturday when Ryan Luis Rodriguez, host of the Coolness Chronicles, invited me out for sake. Not being one to turn the illustrious host down, I joined him, and glass after glass of sake he poured for me. I was so enamored with the silky taste of this Junmai Daiginjo that he poured that had notes of melon and cyanide, that it wasn't until too late that I noted that my vision was blurring, and I collapsed as this poison permeated my organs. Why? I asked, desperate for some clarity. Because Paddington 2 is 10 times better than Shrek 2, he answered.
Yes.
We both know it, and you voted it down. He began to leave the room. Time froze, and Lucifer himself appeared before me. Ah, the guy who voted down Paddington, he said. You are the one soul I'd be willing to come up here and collect myself. Oh dear, Paddington said, that world's nicest bear joining us. Apparently God lets him do some angeling on the side. Well, we can't have that, he said. Aunt Lucy always said, if you look for the good in others, you'll find it. I do believe this chap ought to be given another chance. And so I stand before you, having been given that chance to redeem my soul. Now I must deport a bad film into movie hell as recompense, even if that film is Constantine, which is a film I unashamedly like. So, by special arrangement, we are reopening the gates to movie hell upon which this courthouse is built for an off-season Hell on Reels. Cue the organ music.
Hey, all right.
I hope the demons in movie hell are ready for a feast because this one's finger licking good.
So Paddington was the angel?
He works on Earth, but he lets him do some angeling on the side because
He's like
such
one
a
of
good
those
bear.
half angels, so I get it.
Oh, okay.
Right, yeah.
All right.
Well, I just watched another movie right now.
Possibly. Thank you, Mr. Haslar. I think appearing on behalf of the defense is Mr. Dwight Hurst. Please present your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, wonderful people of the jury and the distinguished prosecutor. Always very grateful to appear in front of you. I'm Dwight Hurst, asshole. I would never, ever actually introduce myself that way. Okay,
Well, you
let's
just
get
did.
that right out of the way.
I almost did.
I did on behalf of my client, John Constantine, or rather the movie Constantine. Obviously, he would introduce himself that way. If I did it, it would just come across as some nerdy guy, maybe sitting in a taxi like some Even Stevens alumni trying to act tough. But John Constantine is tough. Yeah, I mean, whether you call him Constantine or Constantine, and don't worry, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that, and we're going to feel really good about it by the time we get to it. Don't worry
Spoiler
about
alert,
that.
it's Constantine.
Exactly. Thank you. See, I'm already winning you over. Thank you for the callback and the talk back through the opening. I just wanted to start out, though, by saying that the charges that are brought against this film of being a bad movie are utterly preposterous and an insult to cinema. Now, I can't help but feel slightly responsible since it was my idea to do it on the show. However, I'm trying to make up for that by offering an eager defense here to do that. Sometimes you want something subtle. Sometimes you want to watch Alien, where there's a subtle monster kind of in the background creeping around the corners. And then other times you want to watch Aliens, where there's a lot of them and you get to shoot at them, right? And so, we get to decide which one of those we want. It's okay either way, but neither one of them is bad. In fact, as I cite those two classics of sci-fi, horror, and action, I can't help but say that if you want something where there is a more realistic sci-fi bent to it, or whether you want a supernatural, sometimes we just want to watch where we have a hero who stands up like a Doctor Who / John McClane and tells a monster to fuck off and then shoots at it. And that's what this movie delivers for us. I was in a very privileged position to have not actually heard of the Hellblazer comics or of Constantine ever before I saw this movie. So for me, I didn't even realize it was based on a comic book at first. And I was able to view it as a great standalone supernatural noir thriller, which was a lot of fun. But now that I have become more versed in the lore of comics, as a lot of us have had that rebirth in the last few years for some inexplicable reason, I actually now look back at this movie and I'm pleased to see that it actually fits better as an adaptation of this DC property than I thought it did at first. There's a little bit of DC canon you have to break away from, and let's remember that that's the sacred source material that gave us classic characters like Detective Chimp, and all those things. So heaven forbid we go against any of that. But I'm going to establish in my case today that not only does this work as a standalone film, not only does it work as a DC adaptation film, but however unintended, this is a visionary film. Before anyone was talking about multiverses or what ifs anywhere near the cinema realm, we already got an alternate variant of John Constantine. Just think about that. And like so many visionary things and people who can see what others can't, it's misunderstood. Like a mental patient who's psychic but being held against their will. So as I present my case today, it is my hope that you as the jury will be able to reject all the hate and embrace this movie for what it is and wind up just basically cuddling up together with it, like two frogs on a bench.
Or a rat in a dress.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hurst. Mr. Haslar, you may proceed with your first exhibit.
All right. First, I'm going to talk about the exorcism and the seances. So first, the first thing we get is John Constantine doing a direct copy of The Exorcist. I mean, pretty much, right? The girls climbing up on the walls. It's maybe more PG-13-ish, but it's The Exorcist. Don't lie to us. And John says he needs a mirror, at least 3 feet high, and everyone runs right past this one that is literally to the right of the frame. But they need one that's heavier, and like looks good. That'll be coming out the window in a second. Because meanwhile, Chaz, and of course this is Shia LaBeouf, who would play someone named Chaz. It's the perfect name for this guy. He's down there pretending to be cool as Constantine with that whole asshole line that Dwight recreated first in the beginning. But
you're welcome.
That puts in my head that if Constantine is like saying that means like it wasn't, genuine in the moment that he said it upstairs with a demon. This is John Constantine, asshole. It means he says it all the time. And that kind of lowers his mystique down a bit, right? Because Shia LaBeouf is like nowhere near him as he says that. So they hold this mirror above the demon, and it's all of a sudden like trapped in the mirror and it's trying to get out. And he does this whole overly elaborate thing of tying a rope to one end and trying to pull it out the window, and why they can't just, break the window right there with any of the objects in the room, or, turn the mirror on the side a little bit, makes no sense to me. Because I'm thinking they're saying, well, you got to keep the demon in the reflection of the mirror, but they lose that the second the mirror goes out the window anyway. So this whole thing doesn't make sense. But then John goes home, and it makes me wonder
before
how
you begin,
much
Dwight, do you have any rebuttals to this opening exorcism scene?
I do actually. And, even to the little catchphrase piece that you mentioned, I think probably what's happening is that phrase could just be something that John says to be tough. And if so, you caught him. But then again, it also could just as well be his business card. It could just say on there, John Constantine, asshole. right? So that was a thought that I was having, and maybe since Chaz is interning, maybe he's aspiring to get the full title. No, but one thing I was gonna say about that with not only The Exorcist, I'm gonna throw in the movie Prince of Darkness, similar exorcism scene. In fact, it was the one that was cited on the little Amazon notes. So what's the difference between a copy and an homage, right? What's the difference between saying something's a rip-off and something's us saying, oh, we're going to do this our way this time?
How pressed their timing and shooting schedule was, I would say.
That's probably a good point. That's probably a good point. Oh, man. I would say that, it might be a little hard to call for a realistic exorcism, but I would say that how they approach it is probably similar to having a realistic shootout in Lethal Weapon. I'd be willing to grant you that, not handled the best way they could have logistically, but it was sure a cool looking mirror that fell on that car.
Yeah.
Mr. Haslar,
how much do exorcists make, Dwight? Do you know? Because Constantine has this big, huge apartment that maybe needs a fresh coat of paint or something, but other than that, but like downtown LA, I mean, this thing is huge, and he wears $200 shirts, and it seems like being an exorcist is pretty great. And I know, and not one size fits all when it comes to exorcism either, because there's these bugs like that sort of take the shape of a man, and that's on this plane. A car takes it out, right? So like this whole exorcism at the beginning doesn't really fit the the demons that we see very much on this plane throughout the thing, where he's taking them out with dragon fire and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I've never paid for one myself, but I imagine if you had monsters jumping out of people's throats, you'd be willing to shell out a little bit more for it in that universe. I would say, if we know anything from Constantine, he probably conned a genie into giving him that apartment or something. That's probably something that happened off screen.
Oh, instead of wishing for clean lungs, yeah, smart move, Constantine.
Well, he's a very self-destructive individual. That's a good point. I would say I don't know if I'm responding. Sorry. The only objection I have to the wardrobe choice, the only thing I'd say about the wardrobe choice is that, size of homes and size and cost of wardrobe is pretty consistent across media as being pretty out of whack. There's the famous Modern Family house that you can look at of the struggling real estate agent that's worth millions and millions of dollars. It's a stock photo of an actual house. Right. Stuff like
in this movie, he outright says it's $200. Like he said, oh, that was a $200 shirt midnight or something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, maybe he only had one.
Oh, okay. That might make sense. He does wear it all the time. Okay. Yeah. I might withdraw on that.
That's why he's mad about it.
It's better than that shirt they advertise on Facebook.
What shirt?
Oh, there's just all those stretchy shirts they advertise on Facebook.
I thought it was a blood-resistant one.
I'm too poor to have one.
Mr.
So the seances, real quick, I don't see how these things work, because like John Constantine does one himself, and he puts his shoes in this tub because you have to be like sort of half in water and half out to like sort of transcend to the realm of hell. So, but why having your shoes on is necessary doesn't make sense, especially nice shoes like that. And later he submerges Rachel Weisz into a tub when she's getting like the crash course on how to do all this, and her wrists are outside of the tub when Constantine says outright she has to be fully submerged in order to get this whole crash course going. Constantine also has a rubber ducky there. I don't know what that's about, but I think that this whole thing is really just to get Rachel Weisz in a wet shirt, because the sheer amount of down blouse wet shirt shots that they have in this is almost obscene. It almost makes me wonder if Francis Lawrence is one of Michael Bay's pseudonyms.
I don't know if there's an objection to that, but it's completely it's upheld.
Yeah, I mean, I would just a general. Maybe I didn't feel it was overly gratuitous myself, but
sustained.
There we go. I knew I could say anything because the judge already said that.
Yeah,
their hell is better than Spawn's, but not by much. Also, I'll add. So then Rachel Weisz has this sister named Isabel, and she's a psychiatric patient, and she is allowed to walk out of her room freely, go all the way to the roof, and have a security camera close right in on her face and jump. For a psychiatric ward, that's not normal. I'm just saying. And there's no like demons helping her at this point. It's just her. And not only that, but she lives in a hospital that isn't concerned with germs because, they don't wash the window because Isabel writes a message for Rachel Weisz to pick up later. And that's not an indictment on the movie. It's probably the movie's indictment on the healthcare system. So
You think that was an
itself is
intentional? Okay.
Man,
Dwight,
You should see the Yelp review on that hospital. You know what? I'll go with you on that. Holy cow.
Oh my god.
dirty windows, but
So,
excellent security
the
camera
question
angles.
remains, why did she do this? Why did she kill herself? If Mammon somehow like pre-possessed her into the suicide, it isn't her fault, right? So why is she in hell? And as an aside, the priest sort of denying her the Catholic burial seems a bit more medieval in my understanding about how modern Catholics perceive suicide, especially and where they admit that the patient was mentally ill. And one of Constantine's priest friends, he's investigating this, and he finds out that Isabel was possessed by one of the books, and she writes a message to like a book in the Bible that doesn't exist, but that also doesn't make sense to me because they're referencing Paul's letter to the Corinthians, I believe, and why would there be a hell version of Paul writing letters to Corinth? That also doesn't track to me. But he goes down to the convenience store. He's trying to drink all this alcohol, and I never caught why. You know, why is he drinking all this alcohol, and why is it not going down his throat? Or why is Balthazar even there? Why does Balthazar even trying to stop all this? None of this sort of thing adds up to me. So I pass that to the defense.
All right. Well, I think there's about 3 points there. Let's start with the last one first, with Hennessy, Father Hennessy. And by the way, you can blame DC Comics for that name. He is a character from DC Comics. The movie didn't decide, a little on the nose, to name an alcoholic priest Father Hennessy. But,
He preferred Christian Brothers.
his final moments there, I believe, was sort of a curse that Balthazar was enacting upon him. It's why he didn't know he was drinking himself to death. To me, that seemed like pretty standard horror movie type of death fare.
Oh, I did not catch that.
Actually,
I completely sustain that. That seemed pretty obvious.
Oh, I just missed it. In my 10 watches of this movie, I've never caught that.
I will say he had a much more dramatic message leaving strategy than Isabel did when he jams that corkscrew in his hand. But
why is he drinking the alcohol, though?
Well, he's an alcoholic. I mean, for one thing, and he's
okay.
Pretty freaking out, and I think the possession probably doesn't help.
A question from the
much.
bench: what scenes do we see that establishes alcoholism before that segment?
Let's see. He has a flask in the beginning, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, he's introduced with booze.
Okay.
Oh yeah, alcoholism. He's got a flask.
He's got
nailed it.
Well, and he's also he's got the It's kind of like how coughing blood into the sink is shorthand for cancer. It's subtly
shorthand. It's subtly hinted at.
He's got the flask and he's got the shakes a little bit here and there.
Got it. Okay.
Plus, he drinks himself to death in a convenience store. That's another clue. By
then, it was too late. But,
hey, wait a minute.
Along the lines,
the same way, he didn't have a problem.
I would say that there's two quick points that I think could be an explanation for Isabel's presence in hell. Like you say, she's not accountable for it. As far as there's a possession, there's some influence there. And I'm going to go with the kind of the priest first, and then we'll go with the God in general. I think when the priest is saying, just no good, we can't put her. It was ruled a suicide, even though you don't believe it is. We can't put her in a Catholic funeral. I think that probably depends a lot on your local clergy to make that call. Is it a little bit medieval, like you say? Well, maybe. I mean, it could happen. I think it's believable enough to further the narrative. However, I will add that Gabriel was awful close by, and we don't know how much power Gabriel, as the ultimate, one of the ultimate villains of this picture, was exerting upon that decision being made too.
Why would Gabriel care if Isabel's in hell?
Isn't that part of the whole point? Is that
no, they wanted like Mammon to be summoned, but as far as where Isabel's soul goes, who cares? And Gabriel wants to save mankind. That's her whole twisted plot that I'm sure we'll get to at the end.
Well, that's a good point.
You know what's even worse?
Maybe she did.
She's Isabel's like apparently in this ward for like 2 weeks, and like John and Angela are talking at the bottom of this pool, and John asks like, how long was Angela committed? And then I have no course but to imagine this, because this is how the movie's cut. They probably walked in silence, like through the lobby, rode up the elevator into the room. Rachel Weisz walks in, sits on the radiator, and then answers 2 weeks, because the way it's cut is John at the bottom saying, how long was she cut for? Next thing up on the top floor, 2 weeks.
I gotta say, one of my favorite movie tropes. Did anybody ever see that one episode of The Simpsons where they're in the middle of some conversation, then it cuts to Marge and Homer in bed, and he answers her, and Marge is like, why did we wait until now to continue the conversation? I will say about her presence in hell, however, I think one of the things that's important to this plotline is God is not necessarily automatically a good guy in this narrative. So when we run into, it's sort of like in the old movie, What Dreams May Come, where Robin Williams wants to say, it's basically like, well, she's a suicide, technicalities, hell. And it's like, well, that's not very kind. But in this scenario, God and the devil are fighting in a way that isn't always benevolent to mankind. So I think we have to accept that some of those technicalities are actually intended to be unfair.
Sustained. God's kind of a dick. Haslar, you may continue.
God's a kid with an ant farm, lady. All right, just a couple of other annoyances before I get to the ending. This guy finds the Spear of Destiny, and he gets possessed by Mammon by simply touching it. I don't understand that, because Mammon hasn't been born yet, but he gets this symbol on it. This guy, this random guy in nowhere, apparently must be psychic, because for Isabel to be possessed, they had to have like sort of this psychic ability to being half in and half out. And then he walks away and gets hit by a car going friggin' 90 in the middle of the desert. And I don't know what this car was doing on a gravel road, not even a road really, just to plow into this guy.
That's in the prequel.
Oh, is it? Okay. Well, I look forward to that. There's one of the demons that John exercises, like draws the spear and like pins it on a bulletin board in the house. And I don't know why that is. Like, it's not, why are they like cluing in Constantine to what's going on? That makes no sense. Like, ooh, I just love this spear. I'm just gonna draw it. This is what's coming. Also, why are these demons trying to kill Constantine? Because he's basically on death's row with his cancer, right? Just wait him out. You know, he's about to drop in like a week or so, as his doctor reminds him he wouldn't be the first. You know, why is this guy named B-Man killed by bugs and flies? Because he likes bugs? Is that some sort of weird irony going on?
I think you answer your own question in that one. Yeah, I think it's irony. You know how bad guys are. If you get if you don't want to miss your chance to kill the big swinging gunfighter in town, right? Who cares if he's going to die next week?
I'm the one who got him.
I'm the one who got him.
Yeah, they're
I'm
only
the bug person who got him.
Only jeopardizing their own plan, but I guess maybe demons are stupid. I don't know. All right, so let's talk about the action sequence at the end. Balthazar is sitting, and he's one of these half demons. He's sitting and he's looking at himself in the mirror, and then the thing begins to melt, and Constantine blows him away with a gun. I have no idea how Constantine knows Balthazar is on the other side of that wall. Also, Constantine like tells Angela to wait in this car, and he gives her like an amulet for protection, and she just leaves. Like, I don't know why they like bring the amulet up. They could have cut this whole thing and you'd never even known it was there. But he described it as like being a bulletproof vest, right? So even if she is going like, oh man, I can go in and you know, shoot demons up with the best of them, why would you put your bulletproof vest in the car? You know, you still keep it on. You need all the help you can get. I think it's really just to give them a chance to recreate this Howard the Duck opening, to have her like crash through several brick walls and concrete and all that without breaking any bones. After she flies out, John does this whole thing where he meets up with Chaz and they armor up in midnight and all that. But what is Rachel Weisz's character doing this whole time? Because it seems like
she's in a
the
pool.
time where John goes, no, but for the whole time, because like there's a whole big cut of John going to the to midnight and all that, and then he goes into the hospital where she's at, and it doesn't seem like she's been there for hours. It seems like she's been there for more like minutes. When this figure rises out of the water and she fires 29 shots into it, which is not going to happen in LA. I'm just saying. They
don't sell those clips anymore with the 29 bullets. So you got a good point.
And even so, you would see it, right? Protruding from beneath the gun, and you don't. Constantine rips off Blade, right? The action sequence is pretty much straight up Blade, where they're coming at him one at a time and he vaporizes them rather than doing the smart thing and just, tackling him and pinning him to the ground.
Noodle time.
And it's at this point
Thank you.
that I wonder, why is Chaz in this thing? He gives someone, Constantine, someone to talk to early on, but then he disappears, like as soon as Angela and he start mystery solving. And then he just comes back at the end and dies in the most ridiculous way possible by getting slammed in the ceiling and the floor again, telekinetically like a yo-yo. So at least that part I can appreciate. That was actually kind of fun as a Shia LaBeouf hater. But then Gabriel has a very exposition-laden argument at the beginning that we know is going to come to fruition at the end, that he's never done something self-sacrificing. So it phones in this thing way at the end. You're not even on the edge of your seat as Constantine gets saved by sacrificing himself for Isabel to go through heaven. And Lucifer saves Constantine because no, it's his, and he takes all the ashes out of his lungs, even though Constantine slit his wrists. This whole thing makes no sense. It's very dark. It could be like Blade, and it could still have some fun, but it's not adding up throughout. And on that, the prosecution will rest.
Well, Mr. Hurst, what do you have to say? Do you have beef with LaBeouf?
Beef with... Oh, we'll get to LaBeouf here in a second. Yeah. Well, the only thing, and my defense goes into a little bit of that ending piece. I'll just say that personally, I found the ending piece to be quite clever with the double suicide, knowing that would be the thing that would bring Satan. And maybe it's just because maybe I'm just not as savvy story-wise, but when he cuts his wrist and then this devil shows up, it's like, wow, that's kind of clever, Constantine. That was my thought when I very first watched it, because he knew that he'd show up just for him. So, and gosh, now that I'm wanting Paddington to be there now because of all of the.
I know, that's the crossover you didn't know you needed, right?
I know, now I do. We better,
Can I ask a question from the bench?
Delete that part for a spec script we can write. Go ahead.
Question from the bench.
Sure.
Did they establish earlier in the film that the fact that if Constantine kills himself, the devil would come up personally? Or is it first introduced there in that moment?
I believe it's first introduced there in that moment when he says, "You're the one I would come for personally." So to me,
they say that early on too. A demon.
Is there a part
I think
where someone
Balthazar
says
says that to him.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
He
thank
didn't
you.
show up.
Okay, so
There
a
you
demon
go.
a demon tells him.
So that is in it earlier. Cool.
Okay.
Cool.
That helps you.
All right. It does actually. Thank you.
We each caught half of this movie. I didn't catch the alcoholism, but I caught that, and vice versa.
It's nice how we help each other out around this courtroom. We
Right.
all just want justice to be served.
It's the truth that we're interested in.
I will say, beginning my case, I want to talk about a couple of aspects of this movie. One is as a standalone movie, how it meets a couple of interesting things. Obviously, it's an action movie, and I'm going to go ahead and concede a couple points here. It has a lot of the tropes of an action movie. I don't believe that concession admits that it's a bad movie at all, but things like not running out of bullets unless the narrative says I should, leaving my magic talisman in the car when I really probably would have been extra careful to have that on 5 seconds after someone told me, but it was narratively important that I be at risk, right? So it does include all of those things. There's a couple of other things that I think build upon it to make it more than just an action movie. And that is that it's a noir story. In a noir story, there's several components that you're supposed to have. You're supposed to have a flawed protagonist who is also more innocent than many of their surrounding antagonists, right? And we clearly have that. Very flawed, but also, not as flawed as like literal devils. So generally speaking, a non-authority figure like a private eye or a citizen who's caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. In this case, also having a close contact with a cop, right? We got that. A trail of clues, a network of informants, being literally in this case in contact with the underworld, not just a figure of underworld. Also, conspiracy, betrayal, this sort of like Chinatown type of vibe that you get a lot of times where there's something much bigger than us. And you have in Gabriel someone who is an authority figure who has become corrupt and believes herself to be the hero, right? That's going to save the world in a way that will kill tons of people. And so you have a lot of those things. Along with it, you've also got Constantine kind of working the system in between people, and ultimately tricking the devil into showing up where, if he can get a few words in, he can make this work out. So I think you see a lot of elements of it being not only a supernatural action thriller, but also a noir component.
All right, very interesting, Mr.
That
Haslar.
makes it
Any
a better
rebuttals?
movie.
Well, I mean, I do agree that that's what they're doing. I don't agree that that makes it good, because when you're saying, like, it's like they just pick up this book of like, hey, how to write a screenplay. You need this, you need this, you need this. And you're not putting anything unique into it. It's like how Aragon is a direct ripoff of Star Wars, and like once you see that, you start seeing things coming and it starts becoming way less fun.
Mr. Hurst?
Gotcha. Okay.
Is Aragon a straight ripoff of Star Wars? No, that's another day.
Aragon's not on trial.
It's
It
a
is.
side quest. It's a side quest all of a sudden. If any of the members of the jury would like to jump in with that one, I don't have the proper research for that one to say.
It is.
Never seen
I
it.
guess-
Glad to have said that.
Yeah, nobody pick it. Everybody's gonna have to watch it. So yeah, I mean, I guess that one I would just say to table that one for the jury to decide if they felt like the noir and thriller elements were executed well or not, because I obviously feel like they were. So now I want to look at it as an adaptation. And this is the thing that's very interesting to me is a lot of the complaints that I heard from people, both when I began to learn after this came out that this was based off the comic character, was the differences and how this just isn't. And even people who like it, I put a little bit of a feeler out to some people on Facebook in some geek groups that I'm part of. And even people who like it will say, well, it was a terrible adaptation, but I liked it. It was a good movie. Or bad adaptation, decent movie, or whatever they wanted to say about it. People who like the movie often call it a bad adaptation. The things they point to are essentially, he's not British, he's a brunette, and he wears a black coat. Okay. Those are the things that are mostly pointed to.
Because The Matrix came out and that was cool. He looked cool in that dark coat.
He did. And as you'll see, that's actually kind of important. One of the things that I read as I read an interview with some of the creators, and Keanu Reeves, also two of the credited writers for the screenplay, two screenplay writers and two comics writers who were pulled in from Hellblazer comics. And apparently once they decided to attach Keanu to this, and whether you agree or not, whether you think that's miscasting or not, he was cast for it. And he is apparently a Hellblazer fan, although everybody says that when they're cast. I'll admit that. So he comes in and they had this interview a few years ago around the 15th anniversary. And they addressed this and said that they actually had talks about, should he be blonde? And they're like, that's going to look dumb, basically, is why they said no. Should he do an English accent? He's not known for his accent work, guys.
He is
Not known for his acting work.
Basically, the question
Exhibit
is,
Dracula, right?
although in this setting, this is key Keanu right here. If you want Keanu, this is a Matrix type of role. This is a get in there and shoot him up kind of role if you're a Keanu fan. So, but anyway, it was actually done out of respect for how dumb the character would look if they put him in a costume and hair color, tried to make him look like Sting, who the comics character is based off of, actually.
In a cod piece?
Know that.
Yeah, there's
No cod piece.
No
Okay.
cod piece in this.
Oh,
But the brown trench coat, blonde hair. So, and then you get into the pronunciation thing, but it sounds like there's not really much disagreement here as far as it is Constantine. Everybody says Constantine. I don't know anybody who says Constantine. I'm going to put that out
Settlers
there.
of Catan or Settlers of Catan. Like, who
Is it
cares?
Aang?
It was Emperor Constantine.
Let's
Is it
call the
Aang or
whole
is it
thing
Ong?
off.
Yeah. So essentially, here's what I would like to throw out there. I think that as an adaptation, one thing I was not aware of as a non-Hellblazer fan at the time, but have become aware of, is that all the other characters from the priest, and you say, why was Chaz in the story? Well, debate whether or not he should be included, but he is a comic character, a character from the Hellblazer comics. And so a lot of these were included, all the way down to the two sisters, the psychic sisters, detective and murdered sister. Satan, he's in there too, although not an original character to Hellblazer comics. So these other characters are kept pretty intact. I also feel like Keanu's character that he portrays does capture the essence of Constantine. The essence of Constantine is he's abrasive, he's angry, he's isolated, and he's self-destructive. And I think that a lot of the decisions he makes throughout the movie make sense if you look at him as a fractured, self-destructive person who's tortured and angry at everybody and honestly just kind of an ass. That too. Yeah, it's on his business card. So I would say it works as an adaptation in that way.
All right, very good.
Well,
yeah, please. Mr.
I sort of
Hurst.
disagree with you on that because like when you look at good adaptations, like we've talked about Pride and Prejudice, for example, it keeps the book. It has the book there, but it cuts out what's not needed. And if anything, if they do need a character there, that character is rightly scaled into the background because they're not contributing to the story. Lord of the Rings, I think, is like another great adaptation where they cut certain things like Tom Bombadil because it doesn't really serve the story that they're trying to tell.
Overruled. Love Tom Bombadil. Overruled as hell.
Tom Bombadillo?
Yes. Old Mr. Willow? Absolutely. Mr. Hurst, do you have any further exhibits you'd like to present?
I do. One of the exhibits that I sent, and this is an audio medium, so I'm just assuming you guys saw it. It's a panel from a comic where it shows Constantine trapping a spider under a glass and blowing smoke at it.
Oh, that's very nice.
I've just sent it. I've just sent it to the thread for you gentlemen.
So we actually have evidence to review?
This is real evidence.
Oh my God. Okay.
It's useless to the listeners at home, but you can look at it with your eyeballs.
And you can see.
Check our detailed show notes.
And this is one of the instances that was shared with me, some friends online. That, in fact, it's got the name of the submitter of the evidence on the thing. I don't have it in front of me. Dylan is his name. But anyway, so Dylan shared this with me, and this is basically a recreation, right? That you can see where he does the exact same thing in the film. So I guess if one of the complaints that people say makes it a bad movie, it doesn't have to be a perfect adaptation to be a good movie. However, it's a pretty good adaptation in the way that they capture some of the essence of the character and some of those things. And I will say the abrasiveness and the assholishness of the character is something that fans of Hellblazer really love. It's in fact, you could say that this character is more abrasive than the one on the short-lived TV show that was more of a faithful adaptation in many other ways. So, and
well, I don't mind this example because like a lot of comic book movies have done that. And this certainly isn't the first. Like the Spider-Man films have done, direct pulling of the paid panels and put it on the screen. And the Avengers Age of Ultron did it to a fault with all of that extensive action sequence that they made us sit through. But that reminds me, the problem with that scene.
That movie that was cleared? Of all charges?
Exactly.
Oh, right.
I'm sorry, counselor is not guilty. So,
but that point was was sustained in the jury. But the thing that was wrong with that scene wasn't so much the bug. I kind of liked that. It's the fact that Angela leaves there, and then he sees like these demons like fly by the window, and he walks out and chases her down. They have a whole nice conversation before the demons like finally catch up with them.
They get around in their own time. I will say this is just something to tease your brain with. I'm not going to make too much of this point because, like I said, it was surely unintentional. But as far back as the 70s, Marvel and DC have both been big into alternate timelines, and we're now seeing where the infrastructure of superhero movies is allowing them to play with all kinds of weird outcomes, variants, multiverse, the show What If. And so, hey, why not have an American John Constantine? I don't know if you have any rebuttal to that. That's just an observation.
I hate the multiverse, but that is a whole other trial.
Ooh, that'd be a good one.
That is another trial.
All right.
Mr. Hurst, any further exhibits before you rest?
Let's see. Just 2 quick points. One is the cast. And we'll just want to say about that. First of all, I have a quote from The Vern, a friend of the show.
Hey,
devastating.
Now that's evidence.
This is your 1-2 punch right here.
The Vern said,
anything with Tilda Swinton in it is great.
So if you want to, drop the case there or declare a mistrial, that's up to you. I don't want to tell you how to live your life.
Yes. Declare the mistrial. Declare it now.
I just, the only thing is to say that every single one of the people in this cast are really, they're there. They're all in. And you got some great talents there that I think do elevate. And while I think the writing is pretty clever at its best, I think that the cast drags it up a bit to where it's even better. And you obviously you got Rachel Weisz and Keanu Reeves and Jiminson Hansu, I think is how you say his last name.
Jaimin Hansu.
Jaimin Hansu. I did say the last name right. I'm good. And I will say, even though we got LaBouffe, this is for me, this is the LaBouffe of my youth. This is the Even Stevens Transformers 1 LaBouffe, when he was kind of this jokey little clumsy guy that we see here that I kind of liked back then. And hopefully we can get redemption again someday, but we'll see. And then, of course, the great Peter Stormer as the devil. I mean, that performance whether you like the writing of the scene and how they did it or not. He's been low-key the devil in every single role that he's played since then.
Well, as far as Tilda Swinton goes, I rebut with The Dead Don't Die.
Thank you, Ben.
Oh,
God, I had to
devastating.
Google it. Just
Devastating to both you and the Vern.
Yeah, you got him. You got him.
Oh, man. I will say that my only point left is to just add that, I think that they actually, as you put it, there's lots of some tropes here and some things that don't make sense that people wouldn't do in real life that are action movie things. However, I will say the rules of magic, as far as I see them, they do a very similar thing to what they do nowadays in Stranger Things. Give a character just a couple magic powers and then use them inventively. So you've got, in Stranger Things, it's telekinesis and a trance to find people, and then they use those. Constantine doesn't have that many powers. He's psychic, and he knows how to use occult stuff and sneak into hell for a quick trip. And they use those. And unlike some of the modern franchises, some of the things that they do in, especially Star Wars, they don't over-explain the backstory of every single person or every single bug in that bug monster would have to have its own series and backstory and comics if we were in the Star Wars universe. They just kind of let it be a bug monster. And sometimes I like that.
Let bug monsters be bug monsters. Are you resting there?
And yeah, I will rest my case.
Very good. We have heard both sides have rested their cases. So, Mr. Haslar, please present your closing argument.
If you walked into this film after buying your popcorn and your soda and sitting through that pre-show with Maria Menounos and 20 minutes of trailers, plus that dumb Nicole Kidman thing if you're watching it at AMC, and then were treated immediately to Shia LaBeouf being thrown against the ceiling and the floor for a few minutes and then the credits rolled, you would have walked away happy. Unfortunately, that isn't the film we have. What we do have is the measure of how high Keanu Reeves had to climb to be regarded as America's new sweetheart. Because with this, Johnny Mnemonic, The Day the Earth Stood Still, 47 Ronin, The Replacements, The Matrix Revolutions, and The Lake House, there was definitely a period of time there where you saw a trailer for one of his films and felt a certain amount of dread. A few decent John Wick films. Good Lord, how many times has this guy played someone named John? Anyway, a few decent good John Wick films do not a good 2005 film make. In the name of the Kurosawa and the Coppola and the holy Scorsese, I deport this movie to hell.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Haslar. Mr. Hurst, please present your closing argument.
Well, a film that is fun and even dares to be a little funny and a little smart at times. For crying out loud, there's even a reference to the detective series Nero Wolfe buried in there somewhere. That didn't match any of my arguments, but I still wanted to say it out loud because I love those books. I could go on and on about how I think this film is great, but ultimately that would be just like drinking and drinking and drinking without ever feeling quenched, and we all know that where that leads. So I will say, for anyone who enjoys the jerk nature of John Constantine, crashing around the world and turning a trick here and there and outsmarting the devil and all those different things and just basically being an a-hole in all kinds of different ways. If you like that part of the character in the comics, then just imagine if this was a biopic and we were asking the real John Constantine to pass off on it. And we said, hey, I think it'll be a little bit better if we make him American. He'd say, yeah, sure, why not? And then he'd laugh at anybody who was annoyed. So part of me likes to think that, John Constantine would like some of the annoyance that people find with some of this movie, and would enjoy the rest as fun. So even though some may be tempted, as my dear colleague, the prosecutor, is to find this film guilty and deport it to hell, I trust the jury is going to do what's right. Redeem it, forgive its wrongs, help it ascend up to heaven as it subtly gives a middle finger to the haters behind it. Thank you.
Thank you both. Members of the jury, Mr. Rob Maynard, Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, and a theme park full of red delights, Mr. Ryan Luis Rodriguez. You have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
All right, I got my deck of cards here. Tell me what's on the other side and you can enter. Mr. Maynard.
Ace of spades.
Right this way. Mr. Schlender.
Two of clubs?
Also right. Mr. Rodriguez.
A square.
Sorry, this just isn't your day.
I'll tell you the effect it's having. It's pissing me off.
Well, maybe my theory's right. All right, hey, great case. Ben brought up a lot of really good points, kind of death by a thousand cuts kind of thing. Dwight seemed to really focus on like, hey, look at the big picture here. I don't think it gets all the way to bad. So, Ryan Luis Rodriguez, how are you feeling about the case?
I am split right down the middle.
Ooh. Okay.
On the positive end, we have Tilda Swinton as a non-binary angel, which is amazing. I'm obsessed with her curly hair. I mean, I love anything with Tilda Swinton in it. So that
Even
kind of
the dead don't die?
No, not everything with Tilda Swinton in it. Almost anything with Tilda Swinton in it, except for The Dead Don't Die, except for that film.
God, I hate that movie. What was the Vern thinking?
Good. It's not good. Jarmusch is his weakest moment. But at the same time, they save her for like the last 20 minutes. And that was deeply disappointing to me. Same with Peter Stormare. Like, that's the movie I would rather be watching, is the two of them hamming it up. And they don't really show up until it's kind of like, well, it's already over. It's done by now. Movie looks fantastic, except for Hell, which I'm not crazy about, but at least it looks better than Hellraiser 2, where Hell is just a series of identical hallways. And it's definitely better than Spawn, which is CD-ROM graphics. But
8 years later, to be fair.
I remember when this came out, I stayed away from it because I was a big Hellblazer fan and remember thinking, because the whole criticism was that it was nothing like the character. So I had figured that like they probably made it so that he doesn't even smoke. And then I watched this and no, he smokes a lot. He's an asshole. He's abrasive. He's not British. He's not blonde. He doesn't look like Sting, but as far as I know, that's close enough to the character. I mean, the character in the comics is not really a hero. He seems to make the world worse for everybody around him. But I felt that in watching this, it wasn't too far off to piss me off. Okay. But I don't know. I'm so split right down the middle.
I just don't know if Keanu plays abrasive to me. Like Keanu's kind of just so
like Dennis Leary.
Yeah, like
it,
maybe that's like a typecasting thing. But even in this, when he did asshole-ish things, I ended up just not liking the people he was being mean to. I just don't find Keanu abrasive. Grumpy, maybe, but just not cruel for cruel's sake.
All right. So what else are you thinking, Maynard? Like, as far as the case goes, as far as the movie went, I mean, Ryan seems pretty down the middle right now.
I think the most interesting or the most telling point raised to me was raised by Dwight when he framed the picture as a noir. And I hadn't really thought about that. And I don't know if that's a marketing problem. And when I sat down, I was sitting down expecting to see an action movie. And I think when you expect to sit down and see an action movie and then you get this 2 hours of mostly talking, which is mostly what happens, it's a lot of talking, you're disappointed. And I mean, I was put to sleep by this movie. And I think it's because I went into it with a completely wrong mindset. I think if I had expected it to be more detective-y and slow, where suspects are actually, angels and demons, and but it's done kind of as a procedural drama, I would have taken it differently.
But do you think it lands in that area? Like if you went into this,
I think I'd need to watch it again with the mentality that it's a noir movie.
Right, I think let's stop recording. We're gonna go watch the movie again. and we'll come back.
Well, so I'm pretty familiar with the comics and the character, and Constantine. If you could say one thing about this movie, it kind of gave Constantine a little more popularity. He's been in several other like shows and other anime movies and stuff.
He's a big part of Legends of Tomorrow right now.
Yeah, no, he's great. He's inspired other characters like Castiel in Supernatural has a lot of Constantine in there, even though he's technically an angel. So he's a very important character, and I don't think Keanu Reeves necessarily did a bad job. It's definitely not how I imagine him. And knowing that he does kind of this detective investigation kind of angle, I was expecting the movie to be a bit slow with action set pieces. And I don't think the movie really succeeds as a noir, as an investigation story, because I don't think you feel the stakes. It's supposed to be heaven and hell, battling it out. And like you said, they're mostly just talking and getting wet in pools and things to try to like take glimpses into hell. I got to agree with Ryan when Peter Stormare and Tilda Swinton show up at the end. It's like, well, here we go. This is interesting, but the movie's over. We know the movie's over. We've been sitting here for an hour and 30 minutes already. So there's not much you can more you can bring to the table, I feel.
Well, I mean, I did like the ending. I thought that the ending, though, I mean, it's definitely not an action ending, right? Because, I mean, time literally slows down and Constantine just sits and talks to Satan. They have a conversation in the middle of what's supposed to be this big climax, you know? So I thought it kind of took the air.
About it, though.
I actually just thought it kind of took the air out of the balloon there. But again, if my mind is, you know, this is not an action movie, it's a noir, then that may work more. If it's more, you know, this is more of a detective.
I gotta say, I don't think it does land as well when you go into it with that mindset of expecting the investigation and the cool little magic tricks that Constantine can do. You know, I just don't think it lands. I think it's a failure of intentionality, which is something that we weigh very heavily. But
yeah, one thing's for sure: Shia LaBeouf's useless. His character's absolutely useless in this. Not only because he's replaced, you know, better by Rachel Weisz for most of the movie, just that he's neither a tough guy nor a wuss. He's something in the middle, and it doesn't work at all. He's grating. Anyway, I'm gonna go on. This movie did put me to sleep, but I went back and I rewatched the stuff that I slept through, and I kind of want to see it again, though, with that mentality in mind. And so because of that, I have to kind of give it some benefit of the doubt. So I'm going to go not guilty.
All right. Ryan Luis Rodriguez.
Well, I'm still mad at Ben about Paddington, so I'm going to go not guilty.
All right. Well, I think Ben did enough to bring it down in my estimation. I appreciate Dwight's positive outlook on this, but you have to do a lot of hand waving to accept his case, which I'm not in the hand waving business, even though I talk with my hands all the time. Thank God it's a podcast. So I'm going with guilty, but we'll be not guilty once we tell that very handsome judge.
Yes, he is. Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. In the case of the People versus Constantine, we find the defendant not guilty of being a bad movie.
That's a bullshit verdict. Anyway, the verdict is so rendered, Constantine is hereby free to go. However, it hasn't quite yet proven to be worthy of movie heaven. Therefore, I release it into the custody of movie perdition. Court is adjourned.
This is Mumbly Mumbler, son of the Gabagool Gazette, reporting to you live from outside the Reels of Justice. Big Ben Haslar, would you care to share your thoughts on the jury's verdict?
And so the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. I gotta say, Mr. Rodriguez is not channeling his inner Paddington, but hopefully that world's nicest bear who does some angeling on the side will come in and step in on my behalf for a second go here, lest I be condemned to the depths of hell. But congratulations to my competitor, Dwight Hurst. I do agree that this movie it's a pleasure of mine, so it is a not guilty film. I was on the wrong side.
Thank you, or whatever. And here comes Dwight Hurst. Excuse me, can we get a word on how you feel about today's verdict?
Absolutely. As always, here at these hallowed halls, we just want justice to be done and to yank the smoking, burned tumors out of the lungs of the innocent and toss them on the floor. I was actually grateful to be able to represent this. The devil wanted to put his own lawyer in here. Apparently, he's got another son that wasn't in this movie who looks a lot like the protagonist, and he thought he'd advocate well for it. But anyway, I got to do it, and it was a real pleasure.
Thanks, I guess. And that's all we have from the courthouse today. Let's go back to the studio for post-trial analysis.
Right, a little dose of mumbly for your week.
Yes, I love
enjoys
mumbly.
You sound like a morning zoo crew DJ there. We'll do some mumbly there.
Exactly.
How's it going, everybody? Drop trail.
Yes, exactly. Mumbly and the bangs in the morning.
Whoa! Honka honka.
Oh, I'll add all the honka honkas. I'm sure. I'll find something.
You'll have to deep fry Mumbly like Mumbly.
Fun case, and you did make me want to rewatch this movie through another lens, but I've had
Not
enough
me.
Constantine. Had enough Constantine for now. So Dwight, what have you been up to? What have you been doing?
Oh, well, this and that. Been doing quite a bit over on The Broken Brain, which is my podcast. I've been putting out some new episodes. Just talked to a couple of people. It's a psychology-based podcast. I just did an interview with someone who's a music thanatologist, which is somebody who specializes in playing music in hospital rooms and bedsides for people who are dying. And that was very interesting.
And, and they're a big fan of Thanos as well.
I imagine,
thanatologist.
mostly plays the gong,
That's
right?
Yeah. Harp actually, but yes, yeah, the gong that'd be a little intimidating, wouldn't it? So yeah, if you want to picture him at the end scene of this movie, but no, really fascinating, cool guy. And just had some people on recently talking about some of the things that are going on with trans rights for youth and things like that. So been some pretty exciting episodes, and then lining up some cool things for our Patreon. We have a regular contributor, Sharon Blady, who comes on to talk about a lot of different pop culture things. She's the former health minister of Manitoba, Canada, and she comes on to help me nerd out about Marvel things. But she just did a big tutorial about the social and psychological impact of K-pop. And so that's going up on the Patreon pretty soon. I'm excited about that.
God bless those K-pop fans, though. They are doing the Lord's work out there. That's great. So a Broken Brain podcast, and we can find that in all the usual places we find podcasts, right?
Yeah, you can find that. You can follow me on Twitter at Breakabrain if you want to, send me a heads up there of something you think I should be talking about or any feedback there. So,
or if send all your complaints about Constantine directly to him. I don't want to hear anything about it. Now, we always ask our guests for recommendations for a movie you think people should see. So what is a movie you think our listeners should check out?
Well, thinking about in terms of Constantine, I thought of several correct answers. I thought would that kind of tie into this whole supernatural adventure, mystery, thriller kind of genre. But I couldn't help but go with Bubba Hotep. If anyone's familiar with that little gem, you can either watch it and thank me or call me back to defend it later. It's Bruce Campbell and Ossie Davis, both playing seniors in an old folks' home in a little town in Texas that's being haunted by a mummy that's killing off the other residents. Bruce Campbell literally plays Elvis in this movie, and Elvis who has through a series of shenanigans that is, explained in the movie, wound up living under an assumed identity and is now laying there alone in a nursing home near the end of his life. And he and this other member of the nursing home residency are the only ones who are aware of this problem and have to find a way to fight off this demon. So.
And
it's weird.
Ossie Davis plays JFK. It's delightful.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. No, it would be a hard movie. I know what I know about it would be a hard movie to prosecute because I think it's very well aware of when it's being stupid.
Exactly.
He beat me twice, so I'm cutting my losses while I'm behind.
That is true. Now you get to move up the next level to Schlenzo D. On your way to the final boss, which is Ryan.
That's true.
But
if you beat Ryan, you've arrived.
That's true. Bubba Hotep is definitely a great choice. Big Ben, what is your recommendation?
I'm going to recommend one of my favorite exorcism theme movies and go with The Last Exorcism. Well, I'm not quite sure I dig the ending. Everything up to leading to it is so good. It follows a huckster of an exorcist who kind of shows the props he uses to a documentarian, to a that he uses to make a family believe that he's actually exorcising a demon. And then they pay him with the justification that these families are now better off believing that everything, that the demon is gone from their place. But he may have gotten more than he bargained for in this film. But it plays that very X-Files-ish kind of playing at both sides where it's like, ooh, maybe she's possessed, maybe she's not. It would take it right back every time it moved it forward. So it's a lot of fun. It's sort of a found footage thing, but as far as found footages go, it's a very enjoyable one.
Does it have that X-Files charm of having someone say, after all we've seen, you don't believe it?
No,
Oh.
it does not. Very much not.
Can this exorcist afford a $200 shirt?
He can afford
Yeah.
that and more.
He's a huckster, so you've answered your own question. All right, but this is the last exorcism.
You don't get any more.
Can we have just one more?
The
right.
Last Exorcism 2.
It's always the end day of a
There
sale.
actually is a second Last Exorcism.
Oh,
I haven't seen it, but
Yet another last exorcism.
we just stepped on Maynard's recommendation.
That's damn it. Actually, I'm for my it's not a recommendation, unfortunately, though. It's a recommendation. Watching this week's movie, Constantine, and hearing angels talk about humans being unworthy and wanting to unleash hell on earth, it really just made me want to watch my recommendation this week, 1999's Dogma. Written and directed by Kevin Smith, it plays around with a lot of tropes of Christian iconography, but it's actually fun. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are banished angels who want to try to get back into heaven, but if they do, they prove God's infallible and all existence ends. It has a terrific cast, including Alan Rickman, Chris Rock, Jason Lee, Selma Hayek, George Carlin, and in the role of skee-ball-loving God, Alanis Morissette, which is picture-perfect casting. And of course, what Kevin Smith movie would be complete without Jay and Silent Bob? Dogma is weirdly not streaming anywhere that I could find, so you might have to buy it, or you could watch it on YouTube, where some kind soul has uploaded it in its entirety. So enjoy it now until it inevitably gets yanked.
Well, now you just got it flagged.
Yes, yes. We're gonna have a massive footprint, and that's certainly draw the negative
Kevin
attention.
Smith's probably listening.
We had him on recently to talk about Hudson Hawk.
How did I miss this? What episode is that?
It's a different Kevin Smith.
it's a different one.
Oh,
it's
jeez.
not
I'm
that
excited.
Kevin Smith.
Oh, gosh,
didn't
I prosecute?
I
I don't even remember.
Oh, I was more excited about Hudson Hawk. Oh,
We are
that was-
doing yes. That would coming soon.
Are you a Neil deGrasse Tyson fan, though?
No.
You can't find it because it's behind the paywall, but it is there.
That's
It does exist.
Ryan, what is your recommendation?
Tilda. I love Tilda Swinton, and my recommendation this week features her in a supporting role,
The Dead Don't Die.
2019's The Souvenir. This film stars Tilda's daughter, Honor Swinton Byrne, as a young woman attending film school in Margaret Thatcher-era Britain who falls in love with a heroin addict. It's based on director Joanna Hogg's own life and feels deeply observational. I enjoyed the film quite a bit, and I've never rooted harder for a protagonist to dump her boyfriend. The Souvenir is currently streaming on Canopy, and if you want to watch it for free without commercial interruption, all you need is a library card.
Support your.
I
Say the
think
line.
that's assumed you need to support your local library. I don't
it.
need to say it.
Say it. We get a
You
cent
say
every,
it. You say it all the
I
every
just
time you
said
say it. We get a cent.
You get a tax write-off.
Exactly. Schlenzo, send us on home.
JoePontillo.com. Oh, wait. Well, actually, that's funny because I am recommending another movie that's based on a true story, and I am recommending a movie that has good versus evil, and this happened in real life. Historian Deborah E. Lipstadt was sued by Holocaust denier David Irving in Britain. Now, Britain has different slander and libel laws than America does. If you get sued, you have to prove what you said is true. So she had to go to court to prove that the Holocaust happened. This is a real story. The name of the movie, Denial. It came out in 2016, starring Rachel Weisz as Deborah E. Lipstadt. And the movie is remarkable, and it just goes to show you can't take history for granted. You can't take knowledge for granted. You have to be a fighter for the truth, just like Deborah E. Lipstadt was. And spoilers, she wins, which is very hard to do in Britain. And that's why that son of a gun sued her there. And I said son of a gun, not son of a bitch, because I don't want to get sued in Britain for talking bad on David Irving.
It's a fantastic movie.
It seems like it'd be such a short day in court. I mean, there's history books, there's reports, there's...
Oh, no, the whole movie is very in-depth. Her and her barrister go to, like, Auschwitz, and, like, the guy's counting the steps because, like, David Irving says those aren't gas chambers, they're bomb shelters, right? I mean, like, the guy is a real piece of work, and they have to go through and dismantle everything he said and prove how the Holocaust actually happened, literally in court. it's kind of nuts. But it
You
is
got
a great
Tom-
movie. And
Sorry, yeah, Tom Wilkinson's
Timothy,
the barrister,
yes.
right? Yeah, and
yes,
fantastic.
Tom Wilkinson. Yeah, and Timothy Spall, you would know him as the
Mhm.
guy who played the Rat Man in the Harry Potter movies. He actually plays David Irving, and he's
That's
incredibly creepy in that
Yeah.
too. It's
Andrew
Sounds like good
Scott,
casting.
Andrew Scott, who's Moriarty
Yes.
in the new Sherlock's. Yeah.
Yeah, no. The casting is great. It's very well written. It's very good. I found out about it because I was listening to an interview with Deborah Lipstadt. She mentioned how she was played in a movie by Rachel Weisz, and I'm like, wait, what? So then I looked it up.
Rachel
Yeah,
Weisz.
exactly.
And with that, we are all out of show. But we want to thank our guest, Dwight Hurst, for joining us. Thank you so much, Dwight.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
We're going to have you back very, very soon to take on Schlenzo D. That's the next
Yeah!
level.
Ooh,
Next
yeah.
level, man.
It's an underwater level. So good luck. I hope you can hold your breath because he can.
Sewer level's
start-
the worst one, though.
I'll start working on it now.
And he won't breathe till he's back, folks. We hope everyone will join us again as well as the Reels of Justice keep turning.
Count it.
Libraries.
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.